like ideas of things I would like to do. There are certain like stories in my life that I would like to publicly express in some ways. Some I have been able to, like through Tom Chalmers shows.
Yeah,
like,
those are great space for it.
Like I did one where when I had been in the hospital and I had an experience with ghosts in the hospital and again I had had a stroke. I was on a lot of medication, and I just had these persistent ghosts that came in and out of my room that were like in pajamas and stuff, and they were crowded in there, and it was for like days.
Yeah.
And it was persistent, and it was terrifying, and it was also, I was okay with it. But so I was able to express that at one point in one of his shows, and that was really great. I have another story where I was attacked in New Orleans. I lived there for about 10 years, and I was coming home after work one day, and this guy just came up to me, cut my backpack off my back, and then he started running away with it, and I started screaming, and I was going into my apartment building, and by this time I'd gotten the key in the door, and I was in the apartment building, and he came back, and he like strangled me and like put me up against a wall, and was just like, and then someone was coming, and he threw me on the ground and started running. Well, the person who, I'm just going to tell it now, obviously. This is what
we're doing it.
The person, it's finally happening, Ryan. Thank you. Well, the person who like came after him was a Saints player that lived across the street who I didn't know. And this was in the Garden District of New Orleans, where it's like, it's kind of, it's very mishmash. There's not like good, it's kind of like where you live in this neighborhood, where there's some really differentials between the living spaces.
You got like mansions and public housing.
And that's how it was where I lived in New Orleans. Yeah. And so the Saints player was cooking at the time, and he had a knife, and he had a cell phone. And so he started calling 911, and he started running after the guy.
He's like, I got all the shit I need in my hands. I got the 911 in.
Yeah. So he started running after him, and he catches up to him at a park at the end of the street. And he gets up to him, and he says, I have a knife, drop the bag, because he grabbed my bag. I have a knife, drop the bag. And the guy pulls out a gun and says, I have a gun, give me your cell phone. So the guy takes a cell phone and runs off. And they eventually caught him by tracking that cell phone. But this was very early on in the cell phone days. So he didn't realize it could be tracked, and it wasn't something that was like everybody knows.
Yeah.
You don't take a cell phone because and so the police called, and they're like, we got him. You need to come down and identify him. So I went down to the police station, and I get there, and the place is crowded with people in the room. They have us. And there were 15 people there to identify him. And he had shot at people, shot someone. He had stabbed someone. He had a PG version of, I don't know, assaulted the assaulted on some people, and anyway, it was just crazy. And so they took us to an auditorium because there were so many people. We had to like go across the street to some big auditorium, and then they brought out all these guys in jumpers. And I recognized the person immediately, and so the police officers called us back one at a time to say, who we thought it was. And so we get, and I get up there. I was the last called, And I said who it was, and the officer said everybody identified the same person except for 2 people who it's a totally different case. It was just a different case.
Yeah.
And so it was 13 people. So I go on with my life, and at the time I decide to move to Asheville. And so I moved to Asheville in July of late 90s, and I'm there, and then October I get a message, and they're like, you need to come back, and we're going to fly you back into town, and you need to testify. We're going to fly you back to testify.
Wow.
So I did that, and they put me up in this really sleazy hotel, which was right next to the courthouse, where I could almost see a chalk outline, and it was dingy. It smelled like smoke. It was like
they're like
really
trying to
scary.
have it happen to you again before you testify.
Yeah, it was dramatic. And I had a per diem, and I shared cabs back and forth with the other witnesses. And so I had to go into the courtroom, and I remember going into the courtroom and getting, I was really nervous, and I get to the box that I have to go in, and I look over at the jury who were on my right, and they were all giving me sympathetic, like encouraging looks, all of them. And I'm like, okay, they've been just going through this with this dude. And then I look over at the judge, and the judge is this little old man eating a big cookie that's as big as his head. It's so New Orleans. And he had taken a bite out of it, and he smiled at me too. And he's like, I just got back from lunch. And so I told my story, and then I left, and then I flew back to Asheville, and I didn't think of it again until about 3 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I get a call, and it's a parole officer in New Orleans, and he's like, well, we're calling because this person is up for seeing the board, and we don't think he's going to get parole, but we need to call the victims and get victim statements, how it is. So that's why I'm calling you. And so I talked to him, and both of us agreed, like, because he was really empathetic about the situation. He's like, listen, some people are just better. They have better lives when they're in a controlled environment. Like, they get taken care of. They have the regular thing. And
you mean like jail?
Yeah. I mean, like jail.
Yeah.
Like, they're not, it's New Orleans.
You don't have
jail.
to take care of your own housing and meals.
Right. There's a lot of stress that actually gets relieved.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, okay, keep him in jail. That's fine with me. Cause he's like, cause some get worried that they're going to come after you for testifying and get you. And I was like, well, there were a lot of people on the case. How did it get, like, what did the other people say? And he goes, your testimony was the only testimony that convicted him.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
12 other people who had been way more harmed than me.
Why would that be?
I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know, other than it's New Orleans, and they, especially back at this time, they were very sketchy with their police.
Like profiling and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and like 2 of the people who had been attacked had like been trans.
Yeah.
And
so they're like discrediting some of the
there were different things, and like but I don't know. I mean, some of them were very like, the Saints player with his phone. Why wouldn't you, but I don't know if he even testified or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was crazy. That was my story. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. A true survivor in so many ways.
So many ways. So many.
Yeah. I'm always like curious what people like, where they started, like I know you from like running shows mostly,
right?
Which is like, I think the most noble, heroic thing, because everybody's like, I want to be up there with the attention, and then there's the people that actually allow that to happen.
Well, I love it.
Set up chairs. And
I love it. I love every bit of it. I love throwing parties.
Yeah.
And I think of every show as a party.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm throwing a party. That's why I always bring snacks.
Yeah.
And I always just try to have a good environment. I don't. And if I ever do shows that get very routine or where I'm kind of just coasting on it, I lose interest. I have to be
Mix it
interested. Yeah. In what I'm doing. So
yeah, it is always changing. It's not like you don't run the same shows. Like they've changed. I guess I've been doing shows with you for almost 10 years. You booked me on my first show.
Oh,
like it was at the end of my first year. And you booked me on a show at the Social.
Yeah.
And then actually like 2 years ago this month, I was thinking about you and like I featured at Pulp. And it was such a great set. And I've been doing comedy about 8 years. And I came home that night. And I was so excited. I stayed up all night, like writing, you know.
Yeah.
Like I don't love the word manifesting, but I was like, all right, I need to like get out of town. I need to like get a camera and like figure out how to do reels. And it was that show that really, I just wrote like all night. And then since those 2 years, I got a website and I started traveling and I've done all these other things. So like you've been like a huge part of my I did it last weekend.
Was it fantastic?
It was fantastic.
I cannot wait to see. I love those videos. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I'm talking to you like right as my first guest after that because it's like I would not have done the Dry Bar if it weren't for you. You know, you've been there since like the first. Just like an encouraging, like positive, that. Like it makes supportive force.
There's something about the comics journey, and just to go back for a second of how I kind of got into it was, I just, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it. I started with doing the magazines, the humor magazines, and the Disclaimer. And I was married to Tom Scheve at the time, and Carrie was one of our writers,
the OGs,
and my friend Jake Frankel, who does the Slumber Party with me, was a writer, and but after like I don't know, comedy came to Asheville, and we were kind of like. I had been doing it. It was the Disclaimer, the Asheville Disclaimer was a regular magazine that I put out every month.
I remember.
And did you ever see it?
Yeah, I mean, it was tucked into the Mountain Express for a while.
No,
that was later?
It was, so ours was a standalone
Maybe
paper.
I do. Was it on the like street and the thing?
It was on the street.
I do remember that.
Made flower boxes that you could get it.
And then it went into the Mountain Express towards the end.
Yeah, around 2005, I think. I decided it was too much, and so anyway, and then the Mountain Express just called us up. The editor at the time, John Elliston, who's a good friend too, was like, I love y'all. Y'all are, can we have a page in the Mountain Express of this? So then it went another 5 years.
It was like, well, it's last. We can do a page and not be trying to. Yeah. So that's interesting because you and Carrie are like all the way, I've traveled around now and like there's open mics in all the places in Tennessee and South Carolina, but they're not, the scenes generally are not as old as Asheville. Like our comedy scene's 15 years old, which is old for the Southeast.
Yeah.
And then you have the Disclaimer, which is like even going back 20.
Yeah.
So y'all, like those seeds are that's part of what this podcast is, like kind of documenting like,
I love it.
The oral history of,
of the comedy scene.
Yeah, like the Southeast is.
Well, I have. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, it used to be like you have to move to New York or LA.
Right.
And I believe that, like, like hip hop used to be like you have to be in New York or LA or it doesn't count.
You could be anywhere now.
And
doing
now,
anything.
so now the Southeast is like the fact that y'all like planted those seeds so long ago. And like we had like a head start on Southeast. I think Asheville is like a main hub for comedy.
So the original scene, I'm sure they've talked about it, or Carrie's talked about it.
Greenville?
Greenville was a sister scene to us at the time, but Charlie from Laugh Your Asheville Off, which is now the Asheville Comedy Festival, started the first open mic in town, which was at the new French Bar. And Tomato Tuesdays. Yeah. Roach used to be the host, who since passed away. And then after Roach, Andy Worldwide, who's still a part of the Comedy Fest, hosted it. But at the time, so Carrie and Tom, were regulars there. And that's where I met Petey and Becca and just a bunch of, kind of others in the scene, including the initial Greenville scene, who would come to those. And then at some point, I think Tomato Tuesdays ended, and Carrie and Tom were like, we need to find, okay, baby, I'm sorry, your cat is...
Yeah, he's like the dog of cats. He just wants to greet you and hang with you.
Me too. I have cats. I have so many cats. So once Tomato Tuesdays ended, Carrie and Tom were like, we've got to find another open mic. And at the time, because the Disclaimer, they took the name, the Disclaimer, because we were all Asheville Disclaimer at the time. And at the time I thought, well, I'm going to do comedy too. I'm going to get to where I do stand up, Yeah. But I had my daughter. I had a lot of health issues with that. I found out after I had her really early. She was 1.5 pounds when I was 6 months pregnant. It was 27 weeks, and when I had her, and she was 1.5 pounds, and immediately after having her, I had a stroke, and then I had seizures, and then found out I had this very rare condition, which only 1 million people in the world have documented, that's called moya moya, which is Japanese for a puff of smoke. And that's because when you look on an MRI, instead of regular, large veins going from one side of my head to the other, it's all little highways. And so when things happen, like when I got pregnant, and most people don't know until something happens. It just pushed too much blood, and then it caused the issues. And so when I came home from that, I had to relearn my alphabet and certain multiplication tables.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was really serious. And I was really lost. I had to kind of connect with who I was and what was going on, and being a new mom at the same time. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
And so they were doing the Disclaimer. It first started at the hotel that was in South Asheville, and the Airport Road Hotel, which was really...
Oh, the hangar?
The hangar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard the
and that legends. Was really fun. There was crazy times there. And then I guess they moved it to Athena's next. Yeah. Which was also crazy times.
That's where I saw it. I came and saw it there one time. Before I started, a few years before. And
yeah.
It was the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I did a set. I did a 5-minute set at the hangar, which I still have a video of, in which back,
I saw you do a set before. You've done sets since my time.
I've done some here and there.
Sets.
I've done some here and there, but I am too much of, I think, a good comedy critic to not judge myself with realistic eyes. And
you got to be delusional. You got to think.
Yeah, you got to be some delusion,
especially in the beginning.
Yes,
you have to think.
Need it.
You see why everyone thinks they're better than they are. But if you don't have that, if you knew how bad you were, you wouldn't keep.
Yeah,
going.
You do. You need that kickstart.
Yeah, to think you're good when you're terrible.
But it's so fun, and I can't wait to dig this out of my stuff. And I think it's in storage at the moment because I can't find them where I'm at. at the time that the new French bar was going on, I was a member of URTV, which was our public access television.
I was on that, yeah.
And so I was a member, and you could just rent the equipment. You could just take this before the cell phones you could do stuff on. You could just take these major, you hold them and
giant cameras.
And so I would go every week to the new French bar and set up my camera, and everyone walking in had to sign a release because at the open mic that you would be on my show. And it was called Stand Up Asheville. And
it was broadcast on the TV?
It wasn't. It was just recorded to be. And then by the time I was ready, URTV had imploded.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was very sad. I was very sad. But that said, there was a lot of raw footage of Carrie and Petey and Becca and
like early when they were figuring it out.
Early first.
They might not want those.
No, everyone said, "Yeah, I want to see that." They've all been like,
"I would love to see that."
Yeah,
Carrie's got a full head of hair. He's got like an afro.
I'm just very excited to finally find those because he had each one on a mini tape.
Yeah.
So, and then I would interview them at the time, being like, "This is the start of your stand-up career. How are you thinking? How are you feeling?" That kind of thing.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it'd be right in line with what you're doing here.
You're a pioneer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy because I came into the scene like there was a established group of comedians that were good at jokes when I came. So I was able to, I think it's you have examples of how to do it, so that makes it like accelerates your progress into it. Whereas like the early days, you got a bunch of people that like no one's really like run shows or even figured out how to do a tight five. So
well,
all that thrashing.
I mean, there was a lot of, I think, for them working through some of the issues that you have running shows, but there were also, like Cody's sister, was already in the scene and already, she had been in the comedy festival. And so she was
Katie
definitely like, we all want to be Katie, like
I think
in
we all
that
still
kind
of
of
want to be Katie in some way.
She's so awesome. She's so awesome. It's crazy that both Katie and Cody are just so good
and so different. Like their styles are like you wouldn't know. Like Katie's got like tight, short jokes.
Oh,
and Cody's got a more like cartoon character. Off unhinged.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool that way. Like
and Katie does like all the she's like does all the online. She's like very organized, and Cody's just like somebody else might record me. I don't do that. I just go say it.
Yeah.
He does like no self promotion.
Yeah, exactly.
If I had infinite time, I would like take, if I didn't have a day job and a family, I would like be the manager of people like Cody and Jess and people that are they're just like so fucking brilliant, but they're not like they need that person that's got the headset mic that's like getting them into places.
I've considered that so many times.
Make them a website,
so
send the
many
emails out.
One thing I had started to do with my website was add a section where it's almost like comics that are regular in the scene, that are regular to my shows in the scene, have their picture and their contact information, and on my website where people can book them, like just as a thing. And I started to do it. And I even had Larry write some of the blurbs for each of like what their bio was that I had. And so he rewrote some, and I started to do it. I hired him to do that. And then like I had Moira's and I can't remember who else I had. I had maybe Morgan's when she was, everyone left who's I did. So I'm like, okay, they're not here anymore. But it was so much work on top of things, and it's really hard to
Because you want to do it. You want to do it right. And
You want to do
and then
it
you
right.
get into it with good intentions and you go, oh, shit. This
Yeah.
is way bigger.
It's a lot.
This is going to be, because I've thought about trying to like film little specials for people because I'm getting into video and audio and mixing stuff. And I'm like, man, if I could film like a, 10-minute special for Jess and get it out there, I bet it would blow up,
Right.
So, but then I start actually looking at what those steps are and I'm like, I'm already like writing the line of,
Right.
I'm already doing too much every day, before, what is the limit where my family like deserts me? Because I'm doing
It's
push
tough.
that line.
Like time is so precious, and allocating it to where your heart is.
Yeah. But then you still got to pay all the bills and get your kids the new shoes and all that stuff. So it's
There's a lot there. And
I mean, you crush it with that though. Like people tell me, they're like, how do you do a podcast and shows when you have a full-time job and a family?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I prioritize it. I make sure that it's so important to me and I have support. But I mean, all that you've been through and do, and you're still out there producing shows is incredible.
Yeah, so with Slice, I started in 2011. So it was like a year after the disclaimer started. And I was at Athena's, and there was a comic called Kelly Rowe who was really funny. And she was one of those that... she had like a Hillary personality in a lot of ways. Hillary reminds me of her sometime, where she's just out there,
extroverted,
and
lot of energy, loud,
fun, loud.
Like Hillary walks in a room not doing comedy and everybody goes, who's that? Like that charisma factor.
Gravitation.
I'm like, if I had that,
Yeah, it's definitely that there's something there that you're just like.
Some movie star quality.
Movie star
somebody
quality.
saw her do a set, was like, she should be in the movie. That's she has that aura.
Exactly. And so I was just like, oh, like you're and funny and doing stand-up, and she was just starting, and she was one of those people where it's like everyone told me I'm so funny, I should do this, which, I mean, that a lot of people that's how they get started, just everyone tells me I'm funny, and then you got to do the work at some point to keep it going, but people like Hillary, it's just one of those things where she doesn't need a set. There's different people, they need to have their comedy set down, and they need to find their beats and find their, be able to gauge the audience and work with what they've got to try to, pivot if they need to, or just like engage in different ways. But then there are people like Hillary where it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. Your personality.
Here's what happened today.
You're so naturally funny. Yeah. Yes, she will say, this is what happened today. And and then afterwards, I would think it's a bit, I'm talking about Hillary, and she'd be like, no, that actually happened today. That actually, because she was doing the ride share, and there was some person on the street being inappropriate or something, and she came to she was either hosting or something at one of the shows, and she just was like going on and on and on about it. It was so funny. And she was like, yeah, that happened today.
This is my favorite topic. Is like the different ways, the spectrum of I write every word exactly right. I memorize it. I say it to here's what happened today. Like Rory Scovel doing totally improvised sets, and then somebody like a one-liner guy writing. I'm like, I love that there's so many different ways to get there. And I'm always trying to get more away from the nerdy writer into more here's what happened today crowd work, because I want to I get more into improvising because I started as a writer. But we went to the music hall. Emily came out on Wednesday. I've missed a lot of the mics because I was doing the dry bar stuff and traveling, but we were watching this, seeing everyone's sets after not seeing them for a couple months, 4 minutes at a time. It was just yes, Asheville, the scene. A lot of people have left, but there's a lot of new people that are funny.
Yeah.
And then when Hillary came out, she did everyone had a song and the moment to walk out, but when she came out, it was just like, what is like it just was a different level. I remember afterwards we were like, just level. The way she walked out, I was like, what's up? It was like, you could feel everyone be like, oh, this is like a celebrity.
Yeah.
You know, like, and we literally watched like 30 people do that, but she did it on some level that was just,
she is. She's really, really special.
Yeah.
And that just, but you're right. Like, so I do open mics that is exactly why I would do it, where I'll have like an open mic, and then I have, if you get to a level, then I'll put you on as one of the like 3 features on a show. And then if you do that, then after that, I might find you your own feature or put you on a book show.
The coveted, the 20-minute pulp set. It's like,
and there's been just so many people who I've watched go through that process, and it's just beautiful to me. It's really beautiful. And
I've gone through that with you. I mean, you booked me for my first show at the Social, and then like I've done the Orange Peel main stage. Like, I mean, you're someone that really like provides
I had
a path
you bring your
for
guitar
people.
and do songs that I loved, and they were
I'm still trying to figure that out. People are like, you got to combine them, and
it's
I'm like,
a tricky thing.
It's a hard thing to
I've
do.
seen not so good versions of that. But the way you do it well. So
I want to bring it back and try to do it more conversational instead of one-linery, but it was a cool challenge to kind of, I want to do this forever. I want to do it for at least 30 years. So I mean, I do have that in the back of my mind. Like if I could crack the code on that.
Yeah.
Because it's a way to stand out.
I think
not just be another white dude with the beard being like, hey, did you notice blah, blah, blah?
Yeah. No, now you'll be the white dude with a beard with a guitar, which will definitely stand out.
I've never seen another white dude holding an acoustic guitar.
Ever. Not Nashville.
Not Nashville.
Yeah. Nope. No, there's definitely... and I'm sure you've covered this a million times on your podcast with how being unique and finding your uniqueness.
That's what it is
what it's all about. And there's no other way to do it. You have to find your uniqueness,
your voice, like,
and
the things that only I can say. That's the goal.
And
before
that's the only
die,
way to do it.
How close can I get to that?
Especially now in the time of AI, where people can just write, you could just write jokes and kind of copy other people. Like, the more you're yourself is the more that it's the way that other artists have to be as well.
Yeah.
Musicians have to be like that. Physical artists need to be like that.
It's
everybody
it's
in
not
this
the
world.
Content. There's so much content. It's you.
You've got to be you.
I just heard a podcast with Cat Williams talking to Theo Vaughn. Cat Williams is very fascinating to me right now. I've kind of missed him, and he was saying that on that podcast. He was like, it's got to be you they come to see.
Yeah.
Like, and they're those two guys were both saying that was their approach from the beginning, and I was like, whoa, because I was always like, jokes, like I want those perfect jokes and then I'll do them.
Yeah.
But it's just recently, just what you said, I've started to realize, like, but what if it was me? You know, like trying to move in a direction where it's like, it's not the jokes, it's me. And how can that,
it is you. When you're, I think one of your best jokes, I don't know if you did it on Dry Bar, but your Kmart joke.
It's in there. Everything clean is in there.
is so... It's so you. It's so funny. And you've had a lot of good comedy. You really do. And you've got this style, like some of the things I love best about you are, number one, your personality, where you are kind, you are generous to people, you your personality comes out when you're doing your comedy, and I think it just puts people at ease. Like you could be all of our best friend because you just genuinely, you could feel your genuineness.
Thank you.
In that way. And I think that's part of your like that's who you are. And
I'm not the asshole anarchist, which can also be hilarious.
No, I mean there's a lot of some people can do rants really well.
Yeah.
And some people, like early on in the scene, there were so many, it's so different now. There were so many different, when I was doing more regular, just open mics, and people would come in, or people were just starting, or their first time, and you never know what you're going to get. And that's part of the charm of it as well. But there would be people who would come in, and they would it would be like, okay, we're gonna have to shut the show down now.
Yeah, like unsafe shit starts coming out. Yeah,
and it would just be, and people just thinking comedy was ranting without telling jokes, or people thinking that comedy was oversharing.
Yeah,
or just different things that you knew that they weren't going to be kind of moving up the comedy ladder.
I remember there was one time, I'm not going to say the name, but somebody was like, "Why am I not getting booked?" And I'm standing there, and it was like, "You just did a joke about suicide that made everyone so uncomfortable."
Right.
There was not a laugh at the end. That suicide is a topic.
Yes.
Not saying it can't be done, but
right.
the people you see doing it are pros.
Right.
And they know the room, and
exactly.
who knows who in the room has lost somebody. And you have to, that's like a, 10 years in kind of thing to pull off.
Yeah.
And you're trying to do this now.
Right.
And I watch the person be like, just not get it. And I'm like, Michelle you're asking how to get booked. She's giving you the exact formula and what you need to do, and the person is like, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, well, okay, but if you're going to ask for feedback, you got to
I got it.
Like I was like, that is the most on point advice, and I'm watching the person not be able to hear it, and you even said it softly, and I'm just like, all right.
And I'm so sensitive to comics' egos. And where they are and hearing it and different things. I don't want to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
It makes it really.
I know.
Take it with me.
Yeah.
If I'm hurting someone and
everyone knows that about you.
Yeah.
You don't have the vibe of I'm trying to hurt you.
Yeah. I don't like it. I'm what I've called, and I have been for many, many years, as a reformed Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio, which means I'm very gentle, but if I get to a point, my buttons are pushed, then I can also unleash
the hellfire,
but I don't like it.
Yeah.
And it stays with me. And then I have to just be like, okay, I don't want advice I'm giving to like make someone stop comedy or make someone, question, but I will be honest.
Yeah.
And
that's part of it. If somebody's giving you an honest thing,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think in order to keep doing it, you have to take people that are being mean to you and aren't being criticized.
It's like being a writer.
Yeah. You want to put it out in the world.
I've been in the publishing writing business for a long time, and the worst writers are the ones that don't like being edited.
Yeah.
The best writers are like, here's what I've done. I've got it the best place I can. Now you take it, like you go through and just shape it to where my message comes out, my beauty comes out, and you got to make sure you have the right editor. But it's something that is a gift.
Yeah.
That as an editor you can give to someone. I mean, I did that with the disclaimer of editing pieces, and a lot of the things, and I think it correlates with stand-up with writing. Like a lot of the things that had to be edited out for what I was doing is for a broader audience of all of Asheville. where I would make fun of a topic, but it would never get personal other than the topic. So it might include the mayor, or it might include the police chief, or it might include people who were real people who had done silly things. But it wouldn't be trying to get them out of office. Like it wouldn't have an agenda behind it that overshadowed something that everyone could laugh about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think like with an editor, you have to have trust, but then it's like you also have to have humility. Like comedy, the audience is your editors, and that's beautiful. So it's this weird balance of like having enough confidence and maybe even like arrogance to think people should listen to you, but then at the same time having the humility to course correct.
Right.
I think that can be a lot of it is people like think they did well and they didn't. Like you have to receive the editing, and like before comedy, I was doing music in my room a lot and just with the laptop, and it was like, you just make it all up and you put it out. And the cool thing about comedy is every joke I did in the Dry Bar I've done them hundreds of times for different audiences, and they've been my editors.
Right.
And there's been so many lines I'm like, I think that's funny, but they didn't fucking laugh. So it did not go in. Yeah. And it can be hard to take that. You know, you have to have humility and confidence, like in the yin and yang balance.
It's so true.
It's very different. Yeah.
And you've got to be able to read the audience kind of. And I mean, I was doing a joke sometime last year opening Pulp because like Hillary or Cody couldn't be there or something because Cody was working. He was supposed to host, and I was like, I'll come out and say some things. I've written stuff.
He's at the hospital dealing with.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was doing the jokes, some jokes I had written, but they were not thought out as well. My writing style is just kind of barf everything out and then shape it. Yeah. And then get it down, just keep getting it down, keep cutting it down, cutting it down until I'm just circling words on a sheet and then trying to go from there.
Distill it down to just like
everything.
What it
just but I start with getting it all out.
I love that. Carve the block.
Yeah. It's Michelangelo. You know, like this is stone, and I'm just getting it to where it needs to be. But at this point, I had not. It was just kind of rambling. It was still in the kind of, I hadn't found it, and I didn't care. I was just like opening the it was already sold out show. I was like, you're going to get good comedy. It's coming. and so I wasn't that concerned. And so I was doing one of the jokes, and then I realized no one was laughing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to end there, and we're going to just go ahead and start the show. And afterwards, at some point, some woman I did not know came up to me and was like, I wish you had kept going. You know, I really liked watching you and you talking and stuff. And it's so funny because in audiences, all the comics kind of get that. There are people in there that really can connect with what you're saying. And I think...
Yeah, you're not hearing the laugh, so you might be like, this is bombing, but it's actually like people are smiling, they're getting warmed up.
Some comics are thinker, you know, like they make people think. Yeah. And so they might not get... you know, the kind of raucous laughter, you know, that some get, but it's like, oh, you know, like, and I always tell people for open mics, I'm like, it might not be great. It might be wonderful. It might not be great, but whatever it is, you'll have something to talk about on the ride home. Yeah. You know?
I love it. And it's so fast make you too. Think. If it's just 5 minutes at a time, like seeing somebody murder their 5 minutes and then seeing something so awkward, it's kind of like better. You see how they define each other, like how good and how bad it can be. Yeah. And like Petey said, you come and you see like what the first year comic looks like, what a 5 year, what a 10 year, and it kind of gives you that, like that. It's cool to not just see the polished Netflix people. You can just see the meta, see the process.
I agree. And it's fun when when you really do, like there'll be comics in town that are there for shows or something, and they'll jump on an open mic, and then to see that kind of level of a touring comic in that setting. And then you're just like, okay, it is a different thing.
And then, like, I remember in my first year, like, having to go up after somebody like that when you're like 3 months in, and then that person from out of town that's amazing comes in and does their best tight five, and then they're like, and now Ryan Cox. You're like, oh shit. And and you feel you're in front of a bunch of people going, wow, I really have some growing to do, you know? And can you, like, go home and still come back, you know? I mean, all those deaths and rebirths are so great. I feel like a lot of the in your room being an artist stuff can be too delusional. Like, stand up, you have to, like, die on that sword.
It's part of it.
And, like, who's left after 10 years? I mean, I've seen so many funny people just not here now, because it is just like, you just keep... Just when you think you've gotten good and you're consistent, you have a bomb that just... I bombed in front of my mom in a movie theater in Knoxville last year with like 4 people. She was like, I'm glad to finally see you. It was like the worst show. And I was just like, oh, you know, but that's part of the journey of it.
It is.
Like,
it is.
Ups and downs.
Yeah. It absolutely.
And it makes you kind of like when you do die publicly and then you're still alive and you do it again, it kind of makes you go, oh, I don't have to be scared of like failure.
And it gives you a resilience, and I know, I'm sure a lot of people have just talked about how unique our scene is, how much it means to people to have the open mic, to have the disclaimer. As a regular place to go and work stuff out, and but it's also important to get out of town, get to a level and be brave to take it other places and see how it works there, because I think ultimately, you know, you don't want to be kind of delusional that that Asheville mentality is like other places.
Right, especially in the Southeast. You go any direction, 20 miles, do your psychedelics bit. Yeah. People look worried. Yeah. Grandma was laughing in Asheville about tripping. Yeah.
It's different audiences. And I think it's important, and I think it's good for people to and jump in cars together, go on road trips.
And you can't, it's like at some point too, it's like, okay, I'm not just sitting around waiting to get on the same Asheville shows. It's like those spots need to go to people who are where I was a few years ago. Like I need, you can't just stay and you have to get out there. Yeah. And like walking into that room in Atlanta where you don't know anybody. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I thought I was like pretty confident. Yeah. On Wednesdays when I walk into the Disclaimer or the Pulp, I know people, but then doing that walk where you don't know anybody in Atlanta, and there's always like comedians.
Laughing Skull.
Yeah, it makes you be like, okay, this is a reminder what it's like to be new, and I should be kind to people that are like coming in from other places. You know, like the community aspect.
And I do that so much with my shows. I'll have people coming in. So many times it's their first time. They've only been doing it for a few times. They're from out of town because they don't want anyone they know to see them do it. I get that. And that's common. That's very common. And I love that that I can be that person that is kind to them, that kind of is like nurturing in that way. Yeah. Of encouraging and and then you see what they got, and usually people's first times go really well. Like on a usual, their first times go really well because they've got what to say, and it's like going back to writing. It's like that first book you get out, but what's your second book about?
Ooh, the second one.
You got that first album out. Yeah. What's your second album?
Yeah. The sophomore slump.
Huh?
The sophomore slump. The second.
You
wrote your first album over 10 years. You wrote your second album in 10 months.
And it's the same with jokes. Like, you have this and this and this, but you've got to like start working out new jokes and start kind of being in that mentality.
My favorite is when somebody does their first open mic set, like they'll come to the Odd and they'll bring like 8 of their friends. Yeah. And then it's like, all right, put them up last because their friends will leave after they go. Right. So they go up at the end and it's just like their 10 friends are like, I can't believe they're doing it. And it's like they crush, and then they come back the next week without their friends.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
yeah.
This is it's nice. It is. I think the first time should go well, and that's nice. But yeah, it can be like, meow.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
I wonder with comedy, I want to ask you a question. So when I was doing the disclaimer, I was in a constant state of looking at things creatively and what angle can I take. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Asheville disclaimer was like the Onion before the Onion.
Yeah.
And we did parody and satire, and then in the back we did like really cool music reviews around town, that kind of stuff. It was really cool. And but thinking all the time, okay, here's a topic, and I almost thought of it, I drew it out of like, it's like a wheel of like, when I think of a topic, I think of every single thing around it I can think about how to hit it.
Yeah.
Like what angles can I come at it? And then I figure out the ones that really stand out. And I think comics do that too with their topics, or like for add-ons for jokes. So say you go to Kmart, and what else happened at Kmart? Mm-hmm. What can you add into it?
What are all the Kmart-y things?
Yeah, what are Kmart-y things?
You could get a laugh on.
Like someone who's shopping in Kmart or not, or like you don't have to tell the true story. You find the truth that's there in other things, too.
Yeah.
And so it's fun too to see how jokes develop.
Yeah.
Over time. Do you do that? Do you do add-ons to your jokes and try them out?
It's every joke I want to be as long as it can, and usually like you get to like 2 minutes and it's hard to keep. But then you might have other 2-minute jokes that are similar, so you can get a 5 or 10 minute chunk.
Right.
But yeah, I mean I really like what you said, because I am starting to rewrite. I'm trying to. I just did the dry bar, so I kind of forgot that when I had Jess on. He said the same thing you said, where he has like a giant whiteboard, and it's like, if I want to do a joke about this topic, I start by writing the main topic, and then out in bubbles every single thing that's related.
Yeah.
So before I even try to get funny, I'm just like, what is all the angles?
Yeah.
And I
agree.
I love that, and I'm gonna do that next time I write again, because that's like I think for me it's been a little more like, oh, something funny just happened in real life, and I'll write it down.
Let me get it down,
and then I'll try to keep pushing it. But I think that'd be a good way to try to push it. Is go what are the other interrelated?
Yeah, like what are
concepts?
Things that where you can take those bits and make those chunks by and the really the comics that can go for an hour, they are storytellers as well, and they have 2 long chunks, usually like topics, maybe 3 topics, big overarching topics, and then they go in and out of telling you a story about something with all these sidebars.
Yeah,
they can go down a small rabbit hole and then bring it back to the main joke.
Like Birbiglia is a master of that. Mike Birbiglia. Like his first album is just like one-liners, and then he started doing stories. But the story, it seems like a story, but it actually is it has
all these one-liners in it.
So it's just like you said, it's like a main through path, and a normal person would just do that through path. But he knows at every stop of the way, oh, that guy on the way into the store, that's funny.
Yeah.
I get inside the store, that's funny. I get back in my car, that's funny.
Yeah.
And he's like, I really want to get into long-form storytelling, but it's so advanced to be able to pump a story full of, and they have to be different kinds of jokes. An audience doesn't want to hear the same joke in a story multiple times. So that's that's mastery.
It is mastery, and where they can, and then on top of that, someone tells them you have 30 minutes, you have 45 minutes, you have an hour. You can take that joke and just on the fly, you can tag it with stuff. And I've seen like Jess do that, and Cody does that. Like the people who really fluid with what they're doing can can add what they need or according to time, according to how the audience is reacting.
Yeah, it's a living thing.
Yeah,
it's not like these are the words I wrote yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like it breathes. It's gonna be different each time a little bit because the audience knows if you're reading a script from your head. They know like it needs to have some life.
That's exactly right. Where sometimes the audience will like really believe you though. Like they won't. Sometimes the audience doesn't know if you're good.
You can fool them.
They will think
that's the acting skill.
That is like I
new.
went to Target last week, and there was a woman in front of me, and she was checking out, and she had the small kid, and the kid was like and just kind of tag on things or whatever. And people will be like, oh, you really did that? Like that really happened yesterday. And it's like, oh, that was 3 years ago. But,
it feels like right now.
Yeah.
I think, you're right. And like, I've noticed a lot of people that I talk to on here have theater backgrounds. Like music or theater is really common. And I feel like.
Have you taken improv?
No. Well, I did it once and I'm more of not a team player. I agree with that. Like, I'm in awe of like Marlene was on here recently, and I'm in awe of like I even noticed when I was talking to her, she was yes-anding me. She's like able to just
go with anything. Yeah. Well, the thing with stand-up is it is such a personal thing, and but the thing I took from Tom Chalmers, who I had one improv class with him, series with him, and it helped me think about, just regular life. It was just a regular life, like thing where, it's almost like a society thing, a social thing where you can be in any situation and think on your feet, like get that skill. Yeah. That I don't know if a lot of people, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought anyone should be able to do this.
Yeah, I don't know if that's my lane. Like, some of my favorite things, like the things that laugh me the hardest, and my favorite comedy things are things that I'm like, it's always like, how much can I stretch beyond my comfort zone, and I want my next, thing I tape to be different. But then it's also like, there's limit. I am who I am, like you can't, I'm not going to ever be Hillary. So I'm not going to try to act like her, but
it's so important to know that.
But you are wanting to always kind of like push it. So there's that kind of right amount of, it's like balancing humility with confidence is like growth and stretch with like, but know your lane, like nobody's for everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's true.
Like, it's interesting that I'll like do shows with people that are like younger, and it's like, if it's like an audience is more like middle-aged and they have kids, I'm like, that's going to be easier for me because I can relate all those. But then we go do a story for 23-year-olds and it's the opposite. I'm like their dad.
Yeah.
And it's like harder for me to relate my experience.
Jokes then about when you were younger? Do you ever think in that direction?
I have a few, and I would like to explore that more.
Yeah.
When you listen to comedy that you like and you go like, what's going on there? And I've noticed like childhood is... a grown-up talking about their childhood, so it's compelling. So you kind of like trying to mine your childhood for things that you haven't. Just like what you were talking about at the top.
Do you have
like
siblings?
I do. I have 2 sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and were you the youngest?
Middle.
You were the middle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the moderate middle kid. Yeah.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
Tennessee.
Yeah. Not too far.
Yeah.
How'd you get to Asheville?
I moved here like 23 years ago to do music. Because like at that time, Knoxville was not what it is now. You had to play like Rocky Top and Sweet Home Alabama and covers. Yeah, and I came to Asheville and I was like, there's punk rock on Tuesday nights and comedy zines. I'm gonna move here,
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's a good spot.
It is a good spot.
Yeah. It's I see what you're saying though. Like again, the audience. I always think of golf. Like if you're a good golfer, I don't golf. I don't know why I think of golf, but I do know that you can be in your room putting into holes all day long, like getting your shot in or whatever and practicing whatever. But when you get out on the the actual like field.
Yeah.
What's the weather like? What's the wind like? What's the terrain like? That's the audience interaction with the game, you know?
Totally.
And it really, you know, and if you have skills to interact with all those different pieces, then it just takes you to another level.
Totally. And comedy is so great for that, because it's like, you know, sometimes I'll get to do some room that's dialed in for comedy and they paid for tickets. They want to. A lot of times nobody knew there was going to be a comedy show. You're in some echoey brewery. There's a dog darting around. Some kid knocks over a glass and you're like, so you can't do the same. It's not even the same game. It's like, so there's, you know, there's the tendency to want to avoid those horrible, challenging gigs, but then those are the ones that make you good. And then when you get in that like dialed in room where people paid and there's good sound and they're listening, you're like, all right, all those like shit gigs. Right. Now I get the payoff because I've survived those.
It's true. And then you have those people that are like meteoric from the start. They're just the unicorns. Yeah. Where they just shoot up into things. And it's so different things right now with social media being such a way that people are out there, and it definitely
that's new in the last few
is part
years.
of it. And it's important, you know, if you're a comic trying to get up in the scene, you have to do those things that the comics we know that don't want to do them. But getting people look and see how many followers you have on Instagram. It's a thing.
I know. It's like
it's a thing. People judge that before they look at anything else you've got.
If I was not doing comedy or performing, I would not be on social media. Right. But I have to be. Right. For the exact reason you said. It's like, where's your Instagram? Oh, I don't do that. I'm too cool for social media. It's like, well, we're not going to book you.
Right. Exactly.
That's how it works now.
Yeah, it really does. You know, it's difficult. And that's why I like, for my shows, that's why I like the open mics, because I book off my own open mics. Yeah. You know, that people who have come several times, you know, and you just kind of see them just like trying out the different material and getting better or, you know, whatever they're doing. And then they get to that point and it's like, okay, you look like you've got 10 minutes. I see it now. And then they usually do great, you know, as a feature. Sometimes not. And then
sometimes it's like, ooh, 20 minutes is pretty long time. Yeah. But that's valuable too, to stand up there in it. I mean, that last time I did the feature at Pulp, I was like, I did 20. Like, I think the time before that, I had been like, okay. And that was kind of what let me know, like, you know, you provided that path from like, and be like, I need to send out some emails and try to like get a website and kind of get out there more. Yeah. But it's nice that you really provide a path for that, you know, because it's hard, you know, it's just so much not getting picked and so much, and I'm sure people are DMing you all the time and, you know, why I want the spots. It's like, everybody wants the spots. Okay.
No, people, I mean, comics are so nice.
Really?
Yeah. They're very, the out of town comics, I kind of ignore more, you know, but I will look at videos.
That's not really what you do. You're very local. Like, I mean, for the most part, and I think, local. And we need that. So, I mean, it's like, we appreciate that you
the local
prioritize us.
To me. Yeah. And now I can't remember what I was going to say, but
saying like getting DMs from people, that's not been too much of an issue for you, getting like or out of town people.
Like I'm so excited with coming up is going to be my third series of the stand-up comedy contest, and I love it. It's I've been changing how it goes every time and kind of figuring it out. But it's open to everyone. Can come, do 3 to 5 minutes depending on how many comics are on it.
I had a great time at the last one I did.
It's really fun. And then we eventually, like this last one, you know, it gets down to 5 contestants. All the shows are packed. Like the audience is so engaged with being able to vote, it's something about that. It's something about them being able, and everyone does great. And I don't know.
Yeah, I had a
really
great time
love it.
on mine. It was like just you could feel it a little something different in the air.
Yeah.
I wasn't around for one of the. I know the last one was like
Yeah.
you needed to be there for all three, and I was out of town for.
I don't
some
know
of
if
them.
I'm going to do that.
But-
I think I like the way the first one went.
Yeah.
Where every show you had a winner.
Yeah.
And then those winners go to the final, rather than every show these move on. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
I mean, for
need
me,
help with that.
the second one's just
Yeah.
harder because I have such a busy schedule and I'm
Schedule,
doing
you
more
can't
out of
make
town
'em
stuff.
all.
So it's like all or nothing. But it's also like, I think we should do what works. It's not about me.
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah.
stage time and
Yeah.
stuff too. So I'm
Yeah.
not like you should change it just so I can be
Right.
there.
No, but I like the comics input. And
I think it's cool that you're just kind of keeping it. It's like we were saying about a comedy set being a living, breathing thing.
Right.
Like your shows are kind of
Yeah.
have that quality where
Yeah.
you're always like letting us edit and
Yeah.
it's a feedback loop
Yeah,
instead of
I
just
like
like
it.
this is how I do my shows every
Right.
time, cookie
Yeah.
cutter.
No, I don't know why I am the way I am, but I really enjoy the comics being kind of happy with the opportunities. So
I mean, just for someone to run awesome open mics that's not using that to be on stage. I mean, I don't even know if I can think of anyone else that does that. It's such a great, it's such a giving thing, because I think a lot of people will run shows because they just want to be able to leverage that to get on other shows,
Yeah.
which is fine. I mean, that's
Right.
a way to do it, but you have a very just kind of nurturing, kind of giving space
Yeah.
for that. It's very cool.
I don't. No, thank you.
It's hard to take compliments, right? I don't know if that's hard for you, but
And no, I'm good with compliments.
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago to accept them
yeah,
when they're there.
yeah.
It's good.
Well, we are at an hour 15 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Should we wrap it up there?
Yeah,
I can
let's-
get you to Philo.
Give me the philo. I got work to do. I got my
Yeah.
laptop with me.
I got to do a little more work today too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great to talk to you.
You too.
You definitely
This is amazing.
Just a
I really-
wonderful person. It's like I would not
You're a
I would not be doing
wonderful
this podcast or that just take my special if it weren't for you. So
Oh,
appreciate you.
I can't really believe that, but I thank you. Yes, and you're fantastic. You're a fantastic comic. You have been all along, and very good.
All right.
Yeah.
Love you.
All right. Love you.